Let's go to that research from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, that's found interest rate hikes have hit Australian households harder than anywhere else in the world. Now, that's in part due to our very low share of fixed rate mortgages, heavy household debt burdens, and of course, limited housing supply. Cam, it might surprise people at home to know that only 15% of us have got a fixed rate mortgage compared to homeowners in the US. They're at 90% in terms of fixed loans. And of course, they pay the one rate for the whole lifetime of the loan. So if you get a 30-year loan and you come in at 5.5% on your mortgage, you stay 5.5 all the way through the life of the loan. But you look at those sort of that data out today, you look at those graphs and you realise it's any wonder we're in a cost of living crisis.
And of course, the other point with the United States, Peter, is in a dozen of those states, if you can't pay your loan, you can just stick the keys in the door and walk away, and the bank is left to sell it. And if they are the ones that end up with a loss, well, tough luck. That's a power that many mortgage owners in the US have. Of course, you can't do that in Australia here. So many families are tied to the family home for better or worse, even if they have stretched themselves so far to get in the door in the first place. And now so many millions of Australians are really at the whim of the Reserve Bank, and some of those hopes of a rate cut by the end of the year, Peter, are fast dying off and dying out. We've got unemployment still well below 4%. We had that shock figure of February at 3.7%. We've got inflation still above 4% at a quarterly basis. And where I think this really becomes an electoral challenge too, Peter, is as the number of renters rises in the voting population, of course, making up a third of all Australian voters, a third of them rent. That base is there for the taking. We've seen the Greens vote surge amongst renters, even to a point where in the latest news poll, the primary vote for the Greens and the coalition amongst renters is basically neck and neck because some of those offerings are appealing to renters. The Greens have got an electoral currency amongst people who are aspirational, trying to get into a home, but they feel like it's out of reach. So this is going to be a real battleground in the next election. We've seen the coalition really double down on the view of offering super as a way of trying to get into a home, but it doesn't seem to be showing that that's winning people over. Instead, that Greens base amongst renters and young Australians continues to rise. So expect this to be a real battleground, not just in the weeks and months after the budget, but right the way through to election day next year.
I think speculation about RBA cutting rates, Cam, is going to absolutely dominate the political chatter out of Canberra. The government needs a win in this area because they cannot spend enough in the budget, I think, to make a meaningful difference without really spiking inflation. So that'll be the challenge for Jim Chalmers in May. What about this stuff today, Trudy, about all the investors in the renewables energy space saying that they will walk as much as $5 trillion worth of investment will go overseas if, no surprises here, they don't get more subsidies? I mean, talk about renewables being cheap. It's a money pit.
Well, they've got their hand out, but I reckon they're about to get a whole lot more cash. That's certainly the expectation given Chris Bowen. You don't forget this capacity investment scheme. It's been announced before, but he's promising, Chris Bowen, to give us more details in the next few weeks as to how it works. Essentially, it's underwriting new renewable projects to get them in the grid by 2030. But we don't know how much it's going to cost. This is a reverse auction scheme. Chris Bowen saying we'll have some more details in a few weeks, but expect big numbers in that front. I mean, any path you go down is going to cost the taxpayer money here. Prolonging coal, getting more gas into the system, even Peter Dutton's nuclear push, let's be frank, is going to cost the taxpayer a lot of money.
I reckon if you aggregate the cost of all the money we spent on renewables up to date, nuclear is a cheap option. I'll do the maths on that and come back tomorrow.